Poor girl missed her job interview to help a woman in a wheelchair. That woman later wished she were her daughter-in-law. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new dramatic stories. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more meaningful content. Your support truly means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us get back to our main character. Rain poured over downtown Seattle, turning the streets into rivers of light. Amelia Hart rushed across the crosswalk, clutching the folder that held her resume. Her sneakers splashed through puddles as she checked her phone. 8:57 a.m. The interview started in 3 minutes. This job was everything she had worked for. A steady income, health insurance, maybe even a chance to move her mother into a better place. The wind whipped her hair into her face as she reached the glass doors of the building. Then she froze. Across the street, an elderly woman in a wheelchair was struggling at the curb. The wheels were caught in a crack in the sidewalk, and cars kept passing by, spraying water onto her coat. People walked past without even looking. Amelia's hand tightened on the door handle. Her heart pounded. She could pretend she did not see it and still make it in time. But her mother's words echoed in her mind. Kindness is never wasted, even when no one is watching. She turned back into the rain. "Ma'am, let me help you," Amelia said, running across the street. Her voice trembled from the cold, not from fear. She crouched, trying to free the wheel from the crack. Her hands were soaked, the water freezing her fingertips, but she kept pushing until the chair rolled free. The woman looked up, startled. She had silver hair, a pearl brooch on her coat, and a softness in her eyes that did not match her expensive clothes. "Thank you, dear. You are getting drenched." Amelia smiled, shaking her head. "It is just water. Where are you headed? I can get you there." The woman hesitated. "Just a few blocks, to the Wilson Rehabilitation Center." Amelia gripped the handles and began to push. The rain soaked through her jacket. Her resume folder pressed uselessly against her chest. Cars hissed by. The city blurred. By the time they reached the rehabilitation center, the clock on the wall inside showed 9:17. Her interview had started 17 minutes ago. The woman reached into her bag. "Let me pay you for your trouble." Amelia shook her head quickly. "No, please, I did not do it for that." The woman's eyes softened even more. "Then at least tell me your name." "Amelia. Amelia Hart." She smiled faintly. "I will remember that, Amelia." Amelia nodded, gave a small wave, and hurried back into the rain. Her clothes clung to her skin, and her shoes squished with every step, but her heart felt strangely light. When she finally reached the corporate tower, the receptionist gave her a polite, apologetic smile. "I am sorry, ma'am. The interviews are over." Amelia stood there, dripping on the marble floor, clutching the ruined folder. Her dream had slipped away while she was helping a stranger. Outside, the rain had eased to a drizzle. She took a deep breath and whispered to herself, "It is okay. Maybe some chances are not meant for me. Non-toxins except down Talon." But somewhere across town, in the quiet office of Wilson Industries, the same woman she had helped was watching security footage on her phone. Her eyes bright with recognition, and with a soft smile, she said to her assistant, "Find her for me." The next few days passed in a blur of disappointment and gray skies. Amelia sat on the edge of her narrow bed, staring at the voicemail on her phone from the company that had interviewed her. The message was polite but final. "We appreciate your interest, but the position has been filled." Her small apartment smelled faintly of damp clothes and instant noodles. A single photo of her and her mother hung by the window, the frame slightly cracked. Her mother's smile in that picture was the reason Amelia had kept pushing forward, even when the world seemed stacked against her. Rent was due in 5 days. The power bill had already turned yellow with warning. She took a long breath, rubbing her hands together for warmth. The city outside buzzed with life, but inside her room, there was only silence. Every morning she woke before dawn to check online listings, scrolling through pages of position-filled notices. Every rejection felt heavier than the one before. Her last savings were slipping away faster than she could count. By the third night, she skipped dinner so her mother could have enough to eat. Her mother's voice over the phone was soft but worried. "Amelia, are you sure you are eating?" "I am fine, Mom," Amelia lied. "I am just tired." "Do not give up, sweetheart. The right people will see your heart someday." Her throat tightened at those words. The right people. She had done the right thing, helped a stranger in need, and yet here she was, cold, broke, and forgotten. That evening, she pulled on her worn coat and walked to the community soup kitchen down the street. The warm smell of bread and vegetables filled the air, and for a few moments she felt safe. She tied an apron around her waist and joined the line of volunteers. Even though she was struggling, she still wanted to help others. It gave her purpose, a fragile kind of dignity. An elderly man in a wool cap smiled at her as she handed him a bowl of soup. "You always smile, young lady. That is rare these days." Amelia laughed softly. "Smiling is free. It is the only thing I can afford right now." He chuckled, but when he left, her smile faded. Her stomach growled, but she pushed the feeling aside and kept serving. When the kitchen closed, she sat alone by the window, watching the steam fade from the empty bowls. A single $5 bill lay crumpled in her wallet. She counted it twice as if it might somehow grow. Back at her apartment, she turned off the lights to save electricity and wrapped herself in a blanket. Outside, the rain began again, tapping against the glass like a clock counting down. Before falling asleep, she pulled the small handkerchief from her coat pocket, the one with the embroidered initials M.W. from the woman in the wheelchair. She traced the stitching with her fingertip. It was the only thing she had left from that day, a reminder that her kindness had meant something to someone, even if the world did not care. She whispered into the quiet room, "Maybe that is enough." But far across the city, in a penthouse that touched the clouds, that same woman sat by the window, her wheelchair positioned beside a marble table covered in files. She watched the rain with thoughtful eyes, the memory of the drenched young woman replaying in her mind. Her assistant entered quietly. "Mrs. Wilson, your meeting with the board is in 15 minutes. Mrs. Wilson nodded, her tone calm but deliberate. "Cancel it. I have something more important to do." She picked up the embroidered handkerchief from her desk, the same one Amelia had returned through the front desk of the rehabilitation center, and smiled. "I want to meet the girl who chose compassion over ambition," she said softly. Back in her small apartment, Amelia had no idea that her life was about to take a turn she never could have imagined. The rain outside slowed to a drizzle, as if the storm itself was catching its breath before something big. The next morning, the sound of rain had finally stopped. For the first time in days, sunlight filtered through the thin curtains of Amelia's apartment. She woke to the buzzing of her phone. A new email notification blinked on the cracked screen. Invitation. Wilson Foundation, Community Assistant Interview. Amelia blinked twice. Sure, it must be a mistake. She had never applied to the Wilson Foundation. Still, the email looked official: address, time, and location included. She hesitated for a long moment, staring at her reflection in the dark phone screen. What harm could one more interview do? She had nothing left to lose. A few hours later, she stood in front of a sleek glass building downtown. The sign above the entrance read Wilson Foundation for Human Care. The name sounded familiar, but she could not remember why. Inside, everything gleamed: polished marble floors, quiet elevators, and the faint scent of jasmine in the air. Amelia's shoes squeaked as she approached the front desk. "Good morning," she said softly. "I have an interview scheduled at 11. The receptionist checked her list and smiled. "Yes, Miss Hart. Please take the elevator to the top floor. Mrs. Wilson will see you personally." Amelia froze. The name hit her like a quiet shock. Mrs. Wilson, the woman in the wheelchair. Her pulse quickened as she stepped into the elevator. Her reflection in the mirrored walls looked nervous but determined. When the doors opened, she found herself in a large sunlit office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Behind a mahogany desk sat the same woman she had helped that rainy morning. The silver-haired lady looked up and smiled warmly. "Amelia Hart," she said, her voice calm and familiar. "You kept your promise and returned my handkerchief." "They don't massing drum." Amelia clutched the strap of her bag, unsure what to say. "I did not think you would remember me." "How could I forget?" Mrs. Wilson replied. "You gave up something important to help a stranger. That kind of heart is rare." Amelia lowered her gaze. "I did not mean to cause trouble. I just could not walk away." Mrs. Wilson gestured to the chair across from her. "Please sit. I have read your resume. You studied communications, worked 2 jobs, and cared for your mother. You have every quality this foundation stands for: compassion, resilience, and integrity." Amelia blinked, confused. "I do not understand. You are offering me a job?" Mrs. Wilson nodded gently. "Not just a job, my dear. An opportunity. We help people who help others. I want you to join my team. You will assist in our community outreach program. It will not make you rich, but it will make a difference. Mine assessed is of videos from the fro. Amelia's throat tightened. She could barely find her voice. You are serious? Mrs. Wilson smiled. Completely. And something tells me you will meet my son soon. He oversees our operations department. I think you two might get along very well. For the first time in weeks, Amelia felt the weight on her chest lift. She clasped her hands together, tears threatening to fall. Thank you, she whispered. I will not let you down. Mrs. Wilson nodded, her eyes kind but sharp. I know you will not. The world needs more people like you, Amelia. As she left the office, Amelia stepped into the sunlight, her heart full for the first time in months. She did not know it yet, but this moment, the quiet reward for an act of simple kindness, was only the beginning of a story that would change her life forever. Amelia's first week at the Wilson Foundation felt like stepping into a new world. The office was bright and busy, filled with people talking about community projects, donation drives, and rebuilding programs. Everyone moved with purpose, and for the first time in a long time, Amelia felt like she belonged somewhere. Her job was simple at first, organizing reports, answering calls, assisting with event plans, but she treated every task as if it mattered. She arrived early, stayed late, and smiled at everyone she met. Her co-workers quickly noticed her kindness, and even Mrs. Wilson would stop by her desk each morning just to check on her. Still, one person in the office seemed distant: Mrs. Wilson's son, Ethan Wilson, the head of operations. He was younger than Amelia expected, maybe in his early 30s, with dark hair and sharp eyes that revealed little emotion. He rarely spoke more than necessary, his tone always calm, efficient, and controlled. On her third day, Amelia accidentally bumped into him while carrying a stack of files, papers scattered across the hallway. I am so sorry, she said, kneeling to pick them up. Ethan crouched to help, his voice even. No harm done. You must be the new assistant my mother mentioned. Yes, sir, Amelia said softly. Amelia Hart. He handed her the last folder, his gaze lingering for a second longer than expected. Welcome to the foundation, Miss Hart. We value dedication here. For the next few days, their paths crossed often. During meetings, Ethan would ask sharp questions that made everyone scramble for answers. Yet when Amelia spoke, his expression softened slightly. She noticed, but she tried not to think about it. Her focus was on proving herself worthy of the second chance life had given her. One evening, while everyone else had gone home, Amelia stayed behind to finish some reports. The lights in the hallway dimmed, and the hum of the city echoed faintly through the windows. She was so absorbed in her work that she did not hear Ethan approach until he spoke. You work too hard, he said quietly. She looked up, startled. I just want to make sure everything is perfect. He smiled faintly. Perfection is overrated. Passion is better. The silence that followed was comfortable, almost peaceful. Then, out of nowhere, the power flickered, and the office went dark. Amelia gasped. It is just a short outage, Ethan said calmly, reaching for his phone flashlight. Stay close. They stood near the window, the soft glow from the streetlights outlining their faces. Amelia laughed nervously. I guess this city never runs out of surprises. Ethan glanced at her. Neither do you. It with the check, said friend. The lights returned a moment later, but the air between them had changed. Amelia felt her heart race, confused by the warmth in his tone. She quickly gathered her things, mumbling, I should probably head home. Ethan nodded, watching her leave. Be safe, Miss Hart. Outside, the night was cool and quiet. Amelia breathed deeply, her thoughts tangled. She had come here to start over, not to fall into something she could not understand. But the way he looked at her, the way Mrs. Wilson smiled every time she mentioned his name, it all felt like pieces of a story she had not been told yet. Back inside, Ethan stood by the window, hands in his pockets. His phone buzzed with a message from his mother. Do you see it now? He smiled slightly before typing back. Yes, she is special. Is rise, he said, not opponent, is aggressed. And though neither of them said it out loud, both knew that something had quietly begun that night. Something that would soon reveal truths far deeper than either of them expected. The following week, the Wilson Foundation hosted its annual community outreach dinner, an event meant to honor volunteers and raise funds for local shelters. Amelia had never attended anything so grand. The ballroom shimmered with crystal lights, soft music, and the hum of polite conversation. Guests in elegant suits and gowns mingled beneath golden chandeliers. Amelia stood near the entrance, checking the seating charts one last time. She had helped organize the entire event, printing invitations, coordinating caterers, and arranging gift bags. It was her first major assignment, and she wanted everything to be perfect. Her dress was simple, a navy blue piece she had borrowed from a coworker, but she carried herself with quiet grace. Across the room, Ethan watched her for a long moment. He had seen many people in business ambitious, calculating, self-serving, but there was something different about her. She moved with purpose but without pride, helping others before being asked, smiling even when no one noticed. When Mrs. Wilson arrived, the crowd turned to greet her. She looked radiant in a silver gown, her wheelchair adorned with a small white orchid. She caught sight of Amelia and smiled warmly. "My dear, you have outdone yourself," she said. "This evening is beautiful." "Thank you, Mrs. Wilson," Amelia replied. "I just wanted to make sure everything ran smoothly." Before Amelia could slip away, Mrs. Wilson gestured toward the main table. "Stay beside me tonight. You are part of this success too. This planner's not want to go too." As the speeches began, Amelia felt both nervous and proud. When Ethan took the stage to thank the guests, his voice carried the calm confidence of a leader. But when he mentioned the new spirit of compassion that had changed the heart of this foundation, his eyes found hers across the crowd. Amelia looked down quickly, her cheeks warm. After dinner, she stepped outside for a breath of air. The city lights shimmered against the night sky. She leaned against the railing, closing her eyes for a moment. That was when she heard footsteps behind her. "You handled tonight beautifully," Ethan said softly. He handed her a cup of coffee, still warm. "You deserve to enjoy this." Amelia smiled. "Thank you, but I could not have done it without your mother's trust." He shook his head. "My mother trusted you the moment you helped her. I did not understand it at first, but now I do." "There is the Sita." She looked at him, confused. "Understand what?" "That you see people for who they are, not what they have." His tone was steady but gentle. "That is rare, Amelia." The silence between them stretched, filled only by the soft hum of traffic below. Amelia wanted to reply, but words failed her. Instead, she sipped the coffee, letting its warmth calm the storm in her chest. From the balcony above, Mrs. Wilson watched quietly, a knowing smile touching her lips. Her assistant whispered beside her, "Should we call them in for photos, ma'am?" "Not yet," Mrs. Wilson said softly. "Let them have this moment." Back below, Ethan glanced toward the ballroom doors. "Tomorrow, there will be meetings, numbers, and noise again. But tonight feels different." Amelia nodded. "It does. For the first time, it feels like I belong." Ethan smiled, his voice almost a whisper. "You do, Amelia. More than you know." A wealthy saffron stabbered. As they stood together beneath the city lights, neither of them noticed the photographer at the far end of the terrace capturing the moment, the beginning of something beautiful, and the spark that would soon draw the world's attention to them both. The next morning, the office was unusually quiet. The warm laughter and chatter that usually filled the Wilson Foundation had vanished. As soon as Amelia stepped inside, she felt the difference. Eyes followed her. Whispers drifted through the air like smoke. She could not understand why until she saw the headline flashing on a coworker's tablet. "Wilson Ayres' secret assistant caught in midnight affair." Her stomach dropped. Beneath the headline was a photo of her and Ethan from the previous night's event, standing close on the balcony. A soft smile between them, the city lights glittering behind. The picture looked intimate, romantic, even though nothing inappropriate had happened. But the internet did not care about truth. By noon, the photo had gone viral. Every comment cut deep. "Typical gold digger. She planned it all along. No one helps a billionaire's mother for free." Amelia's hands shook as she turned off her phone. She could barely breathe. When she stepped into her office, Ethan was already waiting by her desk, holding his own phone with a grim expression. "Amelia," he said quietly, "we have a problem." She looked at him, her voice small. "I know." Ethan took a deep breath. "My mother already spoke to the board. They are worried about the foundation's reputation. Some donors are threatening to withdraw their support if this continues." Amelia's eyes filled with tears. "So they think I am using you?" He hesitated, then nodded. "Some of them do, but I do not." "Said down." On 6/8, the words meant everything and nothing at the same time. She turned away, pressing her palms against her desk. Ethan, I never wanted this. I would never. He stepped closer. I know you would not. Please, just give us time to fix it. But before they could plan anything, a loud knock came at the door. A secretary stepped in, her face pale. The reporters are outside, she whispered. They are asking for you, Amelia. Panic spread through her chest. She grabbed her coat and hurried to the back exit, ignoring the flashes of cameras from the front lobby. Her heart pounded as she pushed through the door into the cold daylight. The sound of voices chased after her. Miss Hart, are you in a relationship with Ethan Wilson? Did you plan this to get close to the Wilson family? She did not answer. She just ran. That night, she sat alone in her apartment, the lights off, her phone buzzing nonstop. News outlets twisted her kindness into ambition, her compassion into manipulation. Her savings were almost gone, and now her reputation was too. When Ethan called, she let it ring twice before answering. I cannot stay, Ethan, she said, her voice trembling. This is ruining everything you and your mother built. He paused. You are not leaving. Do you hear me? You did nothing wrong. People will never believe that, she whispered. And maybe it does not matter. Maybe I should just disappear before things get worse. Do not, he said firmly. Please, trust me. The next morning, Amelia returned to the foundation to pack her things. But when she stepped into the lobby, she froze. The room was full of reporters again, but this time, they were not shouting accusations. They were silent, cameras ready, facing the front podium. Mrs. Wilson sat there, calm and elegant as always, with Ethan beside her. She looked straight at the crowd. Before you ask another question about Amelia Hart, Mrs. Wilson began, you should know who she really is. The room quieted. Months ago, Mrs. Wilson continued, I was stranded in the rain after my wheelchair got stuck on a street curb. Hundreds of people passed me by. Only one young woman stopped soaked, late for a job interview, with nothing to gain. That woman was Amelia Hart. Gasps rippled through the room. Amelia stood frozen near the back, her eyes wide. She lost her opportunity that day because of me, Mrs. Wilson said, her voice steady. And yet she never asked for recognition, for reward, or for pity. She showed kindness without condition. That is the type of person I trust. That is the kind of heart this foundation was built on. Ethan stepped forward then, his gaze finding Amelia's across the hall. And that is the woman who changed my life. I am proud to stand beside her. The cameras began flashing again, but this time the light felt different, brighter, almost gentle. Mrs. Wilson smiled softly. So if you still need a headline, she said, write this one. The woman who chose kindness over ambition and found a family instead. Ethan crossed the floor toward Amelia, every step slow and sure. When he reached her, he took her trembling hands in his. You do not have to run anymore, he said quietly. Tears spilled down her cheeks. You should not defend me. It will hurt your name. He smiled faintly. Then let it. Because my name means nothing if I cannot protect someone who deserves it. The crowd erupted in applause. Amelia could not speak, only nod. Mrs. Wilson's eyes glistened as she watched them, her voice carrying softly through the microphone one last time. She gave up her dream to help a stranger, she said, and that stranger will spend the rest of her life making sure she never regrets it. Amelia pressed her forehead against Ethan's shoulder as the applause grew louder. For the first time in her life, she felt seen not as poor, not as desperate, but as worthy. And when she finally looked up, Mrs. Wilson smiled through tears and whispered to the reporters nearby, now you know why I wanted her as my daughter-in-law. The days that followed the press conference felt like waking from a long storm. The morning after, the news outlets that had once accused Amelia now filled their headlines with a different story. The girl who gave up her dream to help a stranger and change the legacy. And he had to pause his head along the graphics, but even with the truth revealed, Amelia did not feel relief right away. The noise of the world was still too loud, the attention too overwhelming. When she walked down the street, people recognized her. Some smiled and said they admired her, but others whispered, half jealous, half curious. Inside the foundation, things began to settle. The board that had once doubted her now greeted her with respect. Mrs. Wilson had personally reinstated Amelia's position, but this time, she did more than that. She gave her a new title, Director of Community Engagement. When Amelia first read the offer letter, her hands shook. I do not deserve this, she told Mrs. Wilson. Yes, you do, Mrs. Wilson replied gently. The world needs more leaders who know what it means to lose and still choose kindness. Even with the promotion, Amelia stayed humble. She spent her days planning food drives, charity events, and programs for single mothers. Ethan often joined her in meetings, offering quiet support, but letting her lead. He admired her determination, the way she looked people in the eye, the way she treated everyone with equal respect. One afternoon, while they were reviewing a proposal, Amelia looked up from her notes and smiled faintly. Do you ever think about how strange life can be? One act of kindness changed everything. Ethan smiled back. Maybe it was not strange. Maybe it was fate. Their eyes met for a moment longer than either of them expected. Then the office door opened, breaking the silence. Mrs. Wilson rolled in, her familiar warmth filling the room. Are you two still working? She asked with a teasing smile. Ethan chuckled. Trying to keep up with your best employee. Mrs. Wilson turned to Amelia. Do not let him charm you with that line. He used to say the same thing to his teachers. The three of them laughed, and for a brief moment the world outside felt simple again. No headlines, no rumors, just connection and gratitude. But later that evening, when Amelia returned home, she found an envelope slipped under her door. There was no name on it, just a single piece of paper inside. Kindness may open hearts, but it cannot change greed. Be careful who you trust. Her breath caught. There was no signature, no clue who had sent it. For a moment, fear crept back in the old feeling of being powerless, of being targeted. She quickly folded the note and placed it inside her drawer, deciding not to mention it to anyone. The next morning, she arrived at the foundation early. As she looked out at the sunrise from the top floor, Ethan stepped into the office beside her. You could have taken the day off, he said softly. After everything, you earned it. Amelia shook her head. I do not want to stop. Helping people reminds me that all the pain was worth something. Ethan's expression softened. You have changed this place, Amelia. You have changed me. For a long moment, they stood together in silence, the city glowing beneath them. Then Mrs. Wilson entered, holding 2 cups of coffee. Enough work for one morning, she said, handing one to Amelia. You know, dear, I once thought the Wilson Foundation would die with my generation. But then you came along, and now I see it as only beginning. Amelia smiled, emotion filling her chest. Thank you, Mrs. Wilson, for everything. Mrs. Wilson placed a gentle hand over hers. No, my dear. Thank you for reminding me that kindness is still the greatest legacy anyone can leave behind. Stan of this saps, skedding the passable banam. And as the sun rose higher, bathing the office in gold, Amelia realized that the storm that had once broken her had now become the reason she stood stronger than ever before. The months that followed were the most peaceful Amelia had known in years. The chaos that once surrounded her name had faded into something else entirely: respect. The story of the girl who helped a stranger had become a quiet legend, shared in classrooms, offices, and homes as a reminder that kindness still mattered. At the Wilson Foundation, Amelia's leadership brought real change. She opened new community centers, started scholarship programs, and built safe spaces for people who had nowhere to go. Her calendar was always full, but her heart never felt heavy again. Each smile she saw, each person she helped, was proof that she had found her purpose. Mrs. Wilson often visited her office, not as a boss, but as a friend. One afternoon, she stopped by unannounced, holding a small velvet box in her hand. You have done more for this foundation than I ever dreamed, she said softly. But I want to give you something personal, something that is not about work. Amelia opened the box carefully. Inside was the same embroidered handkerchief she had returned months ago, now framed with a silver border. Beneath it, engraved on a small plate, were the words, "Compassion is the truest form of strength." Amelia's eyes filled with tears. You kept it, Mrs. Wilson smiled. It reminded me that miracles do not come from power. They come from people like you. That evening, as the city lights blinked awake, the foundation hosted a quiet dinner to celebrate the opening of their new headquarters. Amelia did not expect anything special. She was there to thank the volunteers, to celebrate the team. But as the speeches ended, Ethan stepped onto the stage. His voice was calm, but there was something deeper in it tonight. When I first met Amelia Hart, he said, she did not know who I was. She only knew that my mother needed help. She taught me what my father's business degrees never could, that leadership means serving, not ruling. And love. Love means standing beside someone when the world turns against them. The crowd applauded softly, and Ethan turned toward Amelia, extending his hand. Amelia, will you come up here for a moment? She hesitated, her heart racing as she walked to the stage. Ethan smiled as he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small ring box. The audience gasped, but the world around her fell silent. He took her hand and knelt slightly, his voice steady. You once told me you believed kindness was never wasted. You were right. It brought you here. It brought me to you. I do not want to spend another day without honoring that truth. Will you marry me? Tears filled her eyes before she could speak. The room blurred through them, faces, lights, applause, all fading until only his face remained. She nodded, unable to find her voice. Yes, she whispered finally. 1,000 times yes. The room erupted in applause as Ethan slipped the ring onto her finger. Mrs. Wilson smiled from her chair near the front, her eyes shining with pride. I told you, she said softly to those around her. She was always meant to be part of our family. When the applause faded, Ethan and Amelia stood together, looking out at the people whose lives had been touched by their story. She leaned close and whispered, You know, I almost missed that interview. He laughed quietly, and I am so glad you did. Outside, the rain began to fall again, gentle and warm against the glass windows. But this time, it did not feel like an ending. It felt like the world itself was blessing the beginning of something new, proof that one act of compassion could rewrite an entire life. And as the lights dimmed and the music rose, the final image lingered in every heart that watched them. The girl who lost her job for kindness had found not only love, but a legacy that would outlive them both. The morning sun rose gently over the city, painting the windows of the Wilson Foundation in gold. It had been 1 year since that unforgettable night, the night Amelia said yes. The world had moved on, but the story of the girl who gave up her dream for a stranger still lived quietly in people's hearts. Amelia stood by the balcony of the new community center, overlooking a line of children waiting for breakfast. The center had become her second home, a place built from both her past and her purpose. Behind her, soft footsteps approached. Ethan slipped his arms around her waist, resting his chin on her shoulder. You have been up since sunrise again, he said gently. She smiled. There is always something to do. Look at them, Ethan. This is what it was all for. He followed her gaze. Volunteers moved between tables, handing out meals, laughing with the children. The air was filled with warmth, not from wealth or power, but from shared humanity. You built this, he said quietly. She turned to face him. We built this. Your mother believed in me before I believed in myself. At that moment, Mrs. Wilson appeared at the doorway, her silver hair shining softly in the morning light. I told you, too, that kindness has a way of multiplying, she said with a smile. Now look around. It has become an entire foundation. Amelia walked over and hugged her gently. You gave me a second chance when I had nothing. Mrs. Wilson touched her cheek. You gave me something far greater. You reminded me that real wealth is measured by the lives we touch. Later that day, the foundation hosted a small ceremony to celebrate the anniversary of its relaunch. Reporters attended again, but this time there were no rumors, no scandals, only respect. Ethan spoke first, thanking the team, the community, and especially Amelia. Then Amelia stepped to the microphone. Her voice was calm but full of emotion. Exactly 1 year ago, I was just a girl searching for a job and a little hope. I never imagined that a single moment of compassion would lead me here. To everyone listening, please remember this: your smallest act of kindness might be the miracle someone else is waiting for. The crowd erupted in applause. Even some of the same reporters who once wrote cruel headlines now stood wiping their eyes. After the ceremony, as the guests began to leave, Ethan found Amelia standing near the steps, looking up at the sky. Clouds were gathering, soft and gray the same way they had been the day she met Mrs. Wilson. He slipped his hand into hers. It is going to rain again, Amelia smiled. Maybe the world is reminding us how it all began. A light drizzle started to fall, dotting the pavement with tiny circles. Amelia laughed softly and lifted her face to the sky. Do you ever think about that day? There wanted Markin. Every day, Ethan said, because that was the moment everything changed. They stood there as the rain fell around them. No longer a storm, but a blessing. Behind them, the building's sign glimmered through the mist. The Hart Wilson Center for Hope, Mrs. Wilson watched from the doorway, her heart full. She whispered to the volunteer beside her. She was once just a girl who stopped to help. Now she is the reason hundreds are fed every morning. As the clouds parted and the light returned, Ethan pulled Amelia closer. "So, Mrs. Hart Wilson," he said with a grin, "what do we do next?" Amelia looked at the children, laughing under the awning, and replied softly, "We keep choosing kindness. Every single day." Isn't R-rated? The camera of life would fade out there on two souls standing in the rain, bound not by status or fame, but by the one truth they had both learned the hard way. When you lead with compassion, the world always finds its way back to you. I will only say this: the contract is over. What remains is real. The words spread across the world within hours. By nightfall, every major outlet replayed the clip of him holding her hand. Back inside, Elena sat on the couch, still in disbelief. "You just gave the entire world our story," she said quietly. Damien smiled faintly. "Let them have it. I am done hiding." For the first time, she saw him not as the ruthless millionaire who had trapped her in a deal, but as a man who had finally learned to let go. Outside, the noise of the press faded. Inside, the silence was soft and warm. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Damien reached for her hand again, his voice low, steady. "Elena, this time if I ask you to stay, it will not be part of a contract." She looked at him, her eyes glistening. "Then ask me." He smiled gently. "Stay." And for the first time, she did not hesitate. The days that followed felt different. For the first time since she had entered the mansion, Elena Parker woke to silence that did not feel heavy. The storm outside had passed, and the storm inside their lives had finally begun to clear. The media still whispered, but their tone had softened. The world no longer saw her as a scandal, they saw a story of redemption. Downstairs, Damien Blackwell sat by the piano in the living room, the same one she had found him playing weeks ago. His fingers moved slowly across the keys, uncertain but genuine. The melody was quiet, broken, but real. Elena stood in the doorway, listening. "You are getting better," she said softly. He looked up, smiling faintly. "I had a good teacher. You taught me that doing something imperfectly is better than not trying at all." She crossed the room and sat beside him. "You taught me that even the most ruthless man can change if he chooses to." He exhaled, his expression softening. "I never expected forgiveness." "It was never about forgiveness," she replied. "It was about truth." For a moment, neither of them spoke. The quiet between them was peaceful now, not forced. A knock sounded at the door, and the housekeeper entered, handing Damien a thick envelope. "This just arrived from the board, sir." He took it, glanced at the logo, and smiled. "They are offering me the position back." Elena's eyes widened. "And what will you do?" He looked at her, then set the envelope aside without opening it. "I already made my choice." "You are really going to walk away from it all?" she asked softly. He nodded. "Yes. I have spent years building an empire that never gave me peace. Now I would rather build something that does." She smiled gently. "And what would that be?" He reached for her hand. "A life that is real." Outside, sunlight spilled across the terrace. The city that once felt like a cage now looked alive and endless. That evening, they took a walk through Central Park. Just two faces in a crowd. No cameras, no headlines, no pretense. Damien carried a paper cup of coffee in one hand and held her hand with the other. The cold air stung, but it felt good, honest, grounding. "Do you ever think about how it all began?" Elena asked quietly. "Every day," he admitted. "The night I made you sign that contract, I thought I was protecting myself. But the truth is, I was running from everything I had become." She glanced at him, her eyes soft. "And now?" "Now I am done running." They reached a quiet bridge overlooking the frozen lake. The world seemed still, suspended in the golden light of the setting sun. Damien turned to her, pulling something from his coat pocket. It was the ring, the same one she had worn during the fake ceremony. "I kept this," he said. "Not because of what it meant back then, but because I hoped one day it could mean something real." Her breath caught as he knelt before her, his voice steady and warm. "Elena Parker, there are no contracts this time. No conditions. Just a question: will you stay? Not because you have to, but because you want to?" Tears filled her eyes. She smiled through them, her heart full. "Yes, Damien. This time, I stay because I want to. He slipped the ring onto her finger, and the crowd around them, unaware of their story, simply smiled at the sight of two strangers in love. As the last light of day faded, Damien whispered, "It started as a deal, but you turned it into a promise." Elena leaned into him, resting her head on his shoulder. "And this time," she said softly, "it is one we both intend to keep." The city lights shimmered in the distance, the wind carrying the faint echo of laughter and piano notes. The ruthless millionaire was gone, and in his place stood a man who had finally learned what power could never give him: peace, love, and the courage to be real. The following spring arrived quietly. The city had thawed, and Central Park bloomed with life again. The scandal that once consumed every headline had faded into history, replaced by newer stories, newer faces. But for Elena Parker and Damian Blackwell, peace was no longer a dream, it was their daily reality. The morning sunlight filtered through the wide glass windows of their apartment overlooking the river. The mansion had been sold months ago, and with it, the weight of Damian's old life. Their new home was smaller, simpler, filled not with servants or silence, but with warmth. The smell of coffee drifted through the air as Elena moved around the kitchen, humming softly to the sound of an old jazz record. Damian walked in, still adjusting his sleeves. "You are humming," he said with a teasing smile. "That is a good sign." She glanced over her shoulder. "That means I am happy." He stepped closer, wrapping his arms around her waist. "That makes two of us." For a moment, the world outside disappeared. The once ruthless millionaire who had lived on control and precision now stood barefoot in a sunlit kitchen, holding the woman who had taught him how to be human again. After breakfast, they walked to the park, hand in hand. Children chased pigeons near the fountain, and an old street musician played a familiar tune on the piano, soft, imperfect, and beautiful. Damien stopped, recognizing the melody. It was the same piece he had played on sleepless nights, the one she had heard through the open door of his study months ago. Elena smiled, realizing it too. "He plays it better than you," she teased. He laughed quietly. "Everyone does." Then his expression softened. "But I like this version more. It feels alive." They sat on a nearby bench, watching the world move around them. For once, neither of them needed to say anything. The silence between them no longer carried distance, it carried peace. After a while, Damien reached into his pocket and pulled out a small folded paper. "I found this while cleaning yesterday," he said. "Do you remember?" Elena unfolded it carefully. It was the original marriage contract, the one that had started it all. The pages were worn, creased, and faintly yellowed at the edges. She traced her name on the signature line, her heart swelling with the memory of that frightened woman who had once signed her life away. "What do we do with it?" she asked softly. He took the paper from her hands and smiled. "We finish what we started." He tore the document neatly in half. The sound was quiet but powerful, like the closing of a door they no longer needed to walk through. The pieces fluttered into a nearby trash bin, carried for a moment by the spring wind. Elena looked at him, her eyes warm. "That was symbolic." "That was necessary," Damien replied. "It is time we stop being who we were and start being who we are." As they stood to leave, a little boy ran past and dropped a red balloon. It rolled to Damien's feet. He bent down, picked it up, and handed it back to the boy with a smile. The child's mother thanked him softly, and Damien nodded, a gesture small yet full of grace. When Elena took his hand again, she whispered, "You have changed." He glanced down at her, smiling faintly. "No, I finally became the man I was supposed to be." They walked home as the afternoon sun began to fade. The city bathed in gold. The wind carried the scent of blossoms, and somewhere behind them, the piano tune lingered in the air like a promise kept. That night, as the lights of Manhattan flickered across the water, Damien poured 2 glasses of wine and looked at Elena. "You once told me that love cannot be written in contracts," he said. "You were right." Elena smiled, touching her glass to his. "And you taught me that even the coldest heart can learn to feel again." They clinked glasses, the soft sound echoing through the quiet room. For a long time they stood by the window, watching the city breathe. It had begun as a lie, but it ended in truth, a story of two people who found love not through perfection, but through forgiveness. And as the stars reflected over the Hudson, one thing was certain: the contract was gone, but the promise, the real one, was forever.